This is the second of two videos on preparing for the job search. In this video, we will focus on preparing for job interviews, what to expect, tips for preparing, and what to do after the interview is over. So, you've sent out hundreds of letters and resumes, and now you've finally got an interview. Panic immediately sets in. Well, there's some tips that can help you to prepare. First, make sure that you really understand the purpose of the job interview, not just for the potential employer, but also for you. Next, identify some potential interview questions, and we'll go over a few examples here. And then plan how you would answer those questions using the STAR technique. And then practice. Have a friend ask you questions, and you answer them. Even better is to video record yourself as you practice being in an interview. Let's consider the purpose of job interviews. For the employer, the interview process helps to determine if you're suitable for the job, and also how well you might fit into the team. In addition, it helps the employer to see you in action, to get proof of your communication skills and abilities. For you, the job seeker, the interview is your chance to show the value that you will bring to the company. The interview is also your chance to see if you still want the position. When you get an interview, you should always take the opportunity of doing it, even if you think you're no longer interested in it. At best, you might change your mind once you meet people at the company and get the job. At worst, you gain valuable experience with job interviews. As you prepare for the interview, a basic first step is to take the job skills that are listed in the job posting and place them in a table as shown here. Then in the column labeled Me, list the skills and qualifications that you have that match those in the job ad. Doing so will allow you to organize yourself both on paper and in your own mind so that you're able to answer the questions succinctly and coherently. As you prepare for job interviews, consider how you will behave before, during, and after the interview. Remember that you want to ensure that you are acting professionally not just during the interview, but before and after as well. In addition, identify some questions that you can ask the interviewer. Yes, you will get the chance to ask questions too, usually at the end of the interview. It is your chance to show you've taken the time to research the company and that you are thoughtful. So there's 4 general types of interview questions that you may encounter. One of the most common types are directive or non-directive questions. A directive question requires you to answer something specific or provide certain information. Non-directive questions are open-ended, such as, tell me about yourself. Open-ended questions can be difficult to answer well. Clearly, the interviewer does not want to hear your life story. Try to stay focused on what is relevant to the position, but be natural and a bit spontaneous. Remember, it's not only about what you say in your answer, but how you connect and communicate with the interviewer. The second type of question is the hypothetical or situational question. In this case, you may be given a scenario and then asked how you would handle or resolve the situation. This is one where practicing beforehand can help. In your answer, you can try to relate something that you have actually done as an example of how you would resolve the hypothetical situation. The third type of question is the stress question. This type of question is less common, but you may come across it, particularly if a job is a high-stress type of job. In this situation, you'll be asked questions to make you sweat. They are intended to see how you handle pressure or being put on the spot. There may actually be no right or wrong answer. Rather, the interviewers are looking to see how you handle the questions. Now, this type of interview can be harder to prepare for on your own. Remember to keep your cool and don't get flustered when you answer the questions. Finally, behavior types of questions will ask you to describe how you acted in specific situations from your past. And all of these types of questions always provide specific and concrete examples to illustrate your response. Practicing answering questions will make it easier to respond when you are in the situation. So here's an example of a behavioral question. Describe a time when you were faced with a stressful situation that demonstrated your coping skills. So how would you answer this question? Pause the video and jot down some notes. A good strategy for answering interview questions is to use the STAR technique. Doing so will help to make sure that you do not forget to include the specific details that will make for a strong answer. S stands for situation. Describe what was going on in your stressful situation. Perhaps you will need to provide some context to show why it was particularly stressful. For example, exams are stressful, but are not particularly unique. Do you have an instance that is more personal and unique to you? Perhaps during exams a family member got sick. It's your graduating year, so you have to continue with your exams while helping to care for your family member. T is for task, or what you needed to do. So you're in exams, you need to study, and you need to get to your exams on time and prepared to write. You also need to make sure that the family member is not left alone and is taken to doctor's appointments and so on. What do you need to do? Perhaps you call for help from other family members and friends. You create a schedule that enlists the support of other family members and friends so that you make it to your exams on time and can get some studying in. So A stands for action. What exactly are the steps you took to get everything done? And then R is for result. What happened? Hopefully, in our scenario, you successfully completed your exams, maintaining your average, and your ill family member is now on the road to recovery. When you choose your stressful situation, make sure you choose an example that shows how well you handled the situation. You don't want to use an example where you fell apart and failed your exams, or, to use another example, one during which you yelled at a customer who was rude to you. Choose an example that shows you have integrity, good time management skills, good people skills, and so on. You want to show yourself in a very positive light. Of course, don't make up a story. Be truthful, but be selective in choosing your story. So now, how would you change your answer to the question? Describe a time when you were faced with a stressful situation that demonstrated your coping skills. Would you use the same example? How would you phrase your answer? Pause the video and revise your answer to ensure you're presenting yourself in a positive light. Another good example might be if you were a lifeguard and had to rescue someone or organize a search of the beach or water, or perhaps a time when a supervisor was ill and you had to take over and do some job that you'd never done before. So think about what situation will show you in your best possible light. Now, sometimes you will be asked pointed questions such as, why do you want this job? Remember, employers aren't looking for bodies to just fill vacant positions. They want people who can bring something new and valuable to their business. The only way you can prove to an interviewer that you've got what it takes is to show that you know exactly what his or her organization does. Find out as much as you can before you go to the interview. Think carefully about why you want the job. Saying that you are desperate and will do any job is not a good answer. When you really know the answer to, why do I want this job, you'll be able to answer some important interview questions such as, how did you become interested in this field? Why did you submit your application to our company or organization? What are your general career interests? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Next, consider the question, what do you have to offer? Employers want to know why they should hire you and not someone else. To find out, they ask a variety of questions to help them find out who you are and what you can do. To be prepared, review your experiences at work, at school, and in volunteer activities. Keep a mental list of your accomplishments. Think about challenges you've faced and how you've dealt with them. Remember times that you've been a problem solver, and consider mistakes that you've made as learning experiences. So if you make a mistake, take the time to reflect on it and learn from it. Finally, ask yourself what else you need to know. Don't ask questions that suggest you have not read the job ad carefully. If there is something that requires clarification, show that you've read whatever documentation about the company is available, and then ask for clarification specifically. Make sure you do your research ahead of time.